Will Bragg's second 100 of the LV County Championship season dominated Glamorgan's first innings as they fell a little behind their host Kent on the second day of the match in Canterbury. Kent started the second morning on 330 for 8 but were soon all out. James Treadwell fell to the ninth ball of the day, nicking off to Craig Mishada. And at 342 the innings was ended by the same bowler. But it wasn't, as he'd overstepped and Ivan Thomas lived to fight another day. He never got off the mark but helped Matt Coles add 26 for the last wicket before he was bowled around his legs by Michael Hogan, who finished with figures of 5 for 71. Kent's 357 was their best effort of the summer, and it soon looked to be a very handy total, with Glamorgan losing their way after James Kettleborough and Jacques Rudolph opened up with a partnership of 29. In fact, 3 wickets then fell for a dozen runs. Thomas trapped Kettleborough in front for 23. Rudolph lost his off stump to Coles to go for 6. And Colin Ingram edged to Darren Stevens at second slip before he'd trouble the scorers. 41 for 3 should have become 51 for 4, but crucially on 16, Bragg was missed in the slips by Coles. Just before, Chris Cook was also dropped, a more difficult opportunity this time, which was parried by Treadwell. So after lunch it was left to these two batsmen to try to steady the ship. It was Bragg who dominated the scoring in an important 67-run partnership, which just about kept Glamorgan's head above water. Bragg opened up this season with 100 in a high-scoring game against Leicestershire, where he hit a career-best 120. Given the situation of this match, this was an even better effort. His 50 arrived off 75 balls. The left-hander had found the boundary 7 times in that, and was just beginning to get his side back on an even keel, only for the home attack to keep plugging away with wickets at regular intervals. Cook had spent 75 minutes making his 19, only to fall to Stevens, Joe Denley with a catch at cover point. Mark Wallace scored 17 when he edged to pull off Thomas, the man with a Welsh name. Thomas was enjoying his time against Glamorgan. Graham Wagg fell for 7 at 166 for 6, Stevens on the mark again, and suddenly the follow-on was a possibility. Glamorgan needed to get to 208 to avoid that, but were on 182 for 7 when Treadwell was called into action once again in the slips, Mishada on his way to Callum Haggett for 14. To help the Welshman out, they did have David Lloyd coming in as low as number 9, and he was able to stick it out with Bragg to ensure that Kent would have to bat again next in this match. It was now all about getting as close to the Kent first innings total as possible. Bragg moved to 99 with his 12th boundary, one of his more fortunate ones, and just the 4th first-class 100 of his career and his second of this season arrived soon after with a single off Coles. The 28-year-old had required 179 balls to get this far, and he can be extremely proud of his efforts. His partnership with Lloyd was vital. They'd added 64 when the latter perished to Coles for 45 with a forearm smash which headed straight to Daniel Bell Drummond. Bragg got stuck after getting to his ton and was finally out 4.5 hours after arriving for 104, Thomas bowling him around his legs with the very last delivery of the old ball. Hogan, whose 5-wicket haul earlier was the 14th of his first-class career, then added some useful runs for number 11, until he lost his middle stump to Stevens for 19. Glamorgan ending on 281. Treadwell came out to open Kent's second innings, taking a single off the last ball of the only over, which means that the home side enter the second half of this contest with a lead of 77, and with everything still to play for.